So as we consider which decisions can be made, I've already mentioned a few of them, but a big part of why we would want to do evaluation is to improve the program. So before we've decided if we're making any high-stakes decisions, first we'd just like to use that information to get better at what we're doing. That's more common in formative evaluation and early evaluation. And then eventually, as you get toward the other end of the continuum in summative evaluation, you would be considering whether you would scale up the program, continue or close the program. And then there are other implications or uses of evaluation which might have to relate to policy or other ways that your districts or even states make decisions about professional learning. So sometimes evaluations can inform on that broader level how you're thinking about your professional learning strategy or how you're thinking about engaging teachers in this professional learning strategy. So another framework that we'd like to present to you today comes from Michael Patton. He's an evaluation scholar who thinks a lot about use and how people use the decisions from evaluations. He has a framework where he starts off with outlining a couple of forms of use. The first two are instrumental use, which are that evaluation findings directly inform decision-making or problem-solving. So for example, if the school decides on the basis of an evaluation to adopt a new curriculum or start a new professional learning strategy, that would be an example of instrumental use. A second example of use is conceptual use. This is influencing how key people think. So policymakers may understand an issue better after an evaluation, even though you may not see any direct actions. So in this case, for professional learning, if you were to study the STEM partnership and you were to discover that this really makes a difference in how well teachers plan their lessons in inquiry-based math and science, that may not lead to immediate changes, but it might start to influence the principals thinking about the program. It might start to influence the district leaders thinking about continuing to fund the program, which may eventually lead to that instrumental use. We also want to be cautious of two types of use, symbolic use and persuasive use. Symbolic use is when evaluation is conducted primarily for the sake of appearances. Somebody has mandated the evaluation or it's required in some kind of guidance, but the decision makers really don't have the intention of using the results to change anything. That is symbolic use. And then the last kind is persuasive use. So sometimes evaluations are done selectively or findings from evaluations are used selectively to support somebody's previously held position. This is the problem when people pick and choose which findings they want to support their case. In some cases, maybe the data actually support this position. That's not a problem because then you are reporting what is true, but people forget to also report maybe the negative findings or they forget to report the limitations because what you're trying to do is persuade people beyond what the data can tell you. So you want to be cautious of those two forms of use, even though they do happen. So what Michael Patton advocates for is this attention to utilization-focused evaluation. So we really need to think about the intended user and the communities that are targeted by these evaluations and use leadership in order to make use a part of the evaluation process, make decision-making part of the evaluation process, and not just have evaluation be a data collection task that's focused on reporting. So that is just something to take away, and if you'd like to learn more, you can read up on utilization-focused evaluation by Michael Patton, and we have a reference in at the end of these slides. So when you think about use, as Katrina was saying earlier, you want to think about your audience or your stakeholders, people who actually have a stake in the evaluation. So you need to think about some questions such as what decisions can be made as a result of these evaluations, who will make them and by when, how can we present the results in a way that those are used in a timely and influential way, and then what needs to be done in order to achieve the level of influence you want. So you might, for example, pay special attention way at the beginning of planning for an evaluation about which stakeholders to involve. If you know you need to make some changes, for example, to how principals are working with teachers around professional learning, you're going to want a stakeholder group full of principals who can tell you what they think about the program. And so another set of questions is how will stakeholders be involved in making those decisions? So not just considering from the beginning how they'll be part of the evaluation planning, but once the evaluation is over and once you actually have the data and findings, how will the stakeholders participate in discussing implications of those findings? Will they be able to use the findings for their own next steps? Maybe that's the advantage of a workshop, bringing people together to talk about implications, rather than the evaluator being the one to say, here's what I think you should do, having the stakeholders gather together and say, this is what we found, what do we think we should do?